Have you ever played a Sonic game and thought to yourself, wow, I'm getting so many rings? Well, today, I'm here to answer the question that nobody asked. Can you beat a 2D Sonic game without collecting a single ring? Here's the rules. Rule number 1, original characters. Rule number 2, no glitches. That means no zips or anything of the like. And 3, lastly, no debug menu. Due to the nature of this challenge, I will also not be attempting games such as Knuckles Chaotix, Sonic Advance 3, or Sonic 4 Episode 2. The reason being is because these games require you to have a partner character. And due to the random nature of these partner characters, they will collect rings for you even while they're off screen, such as the example here. Just a quick disclaimer though. Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic CD, and Sonic 3 and Knuckles will be played on the Sonic Origins collection. There may be some slight variation from the originals and this collection, so bear that in mind. With that being out of the way, let's jump into it. Our first game is going to be Sonic 1. Starting in Green Hill Act 1, it's very simple for the most part. All you have to do is make sure that you take the right path, dodge those pesky rings, and also keep your speed up. You do have a tough jump here, and after that, it does get quite a bit easier. Continuing onwards, we do take the tube down, dodge the rings, and then also do not take the jump to get all the rings. Doing so allows us to dodge these rings and also take the bottom path, which has less rings and also allows me to see more. Having completed Act 1, we move into Act 2. Act 2 is much of the same, but we need to ensure that we take the bottom path. The reason being is because on the top path, there is a swinging platform that has rings surrounding it. If we attempt to go through that path, it is impossible, unless we use Spin Dash. If we use Spin Dash, we are not keeping in spirit with the rules. Moving on to Act 3, you just need to take one specific path, ensuring that you don't collect the rings that you can obviously see, but also the rings that you cannot see. There is this one spot in Green Hill Act 3 that is required to have an invincibility monitor in order to get past. And that is this spot right here, which is lined with spikes and also lined with rings to the right. Unfortunately, Marble Zone Act 1 cannot be completed, as this platform right here is directly underneath 5 rings. And also, with the 5 rings here, you cannot go around it due to the raised platform. Unfortunate showing for Sonic 1, but hopefully Sonic 2 can be better. Going into Emerald Hill in Sonic 2, we have much of the same issue that we do with Sonic 1, where we do need to go a certain path in order to avoid our rings. On top of that, we do have access to speed shoes, which allows us to skip a portion of the level. For some weird reason though, getting all the way through Emerald Hill Act 1 is not too bad. There is this one spot right here that if you don't have invincibility, you might struggle with. Outside of that, a majority of the act is completable until you get to the end. Upon further inspection, it seems that it's impossible to get to the top platform. Moving on to Sonic 3, Tails has the ability to fly, which makes this a lot easier. Going through Angel Island, there's not too much issue upon getting to the cutscene for Angel Island getting torched. Going further into the Burning Island, we do have this spot right here, which seems to be impossible for Sonic and Knuckles. After that, going into Act 2, that is where the problems arise, however. As you can see, going into this tunnel, which is forced as there is no alternate paths, we are forced to gather rings. So we're going to take a little bit of an intermission here, and I'm going to show you the games that did not make it past Act 1. So the first two that you saw were Sonic 1 8-bit and Sonic 2 8-bit. What's really interesting though is that most of the games, it allows you to get kind of far into the first act, but more often than not, you're just out of luck when it comes to it, since they force you to have paths that force rings and you don't have a way to avoid said path. I will also take a moment to note that I may not have footage of it, but I can personally confirm that Sonic Generations on the 3DS is unable to be completed in this challenge as well. I would take a moment to mention Sonic Boom, but do we really want to mention Sonic Boom on this? Before we move on, I just want to quickly take a note and say that these games had their challenges end in the first act of the game. Sonic 1 8-bit, Sonic 2 8-bit, Sonic Chaos, Sonic CD, Sonic Rush Adventure, Sonic Colors for the DS, Sonic Generations for the 3DS, Sonic Advance 3. We also have Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic Pocket Adventure, Knuckles Chaotix, and Sonic 4 Episode 1, as well as the Sonic Boom 3DS game. It is unfortunate to see even these 2D games be incompletable even in a single act. Sonic 4 Episode 2 also falls into the issue of having a second AI-controlled character. Because of this, it's very unlikely to be able to control what said character does, and more often than not will be more of an obstacle than a boon, forcing us to collect rings. That's also why I'm going to be counting Sonic Advance 3 and Knuckles Chaotix as unable to be finished as well. Not only that, Knuckles Chaotix, you have a ring with you, so challenge automatically lost, right? It is pretty unfortunate that you have acts that are unable to be completed in any capacity whatsoever, because a lot of these games, once you get past them, I'd imagine that you'd be able to get through their games in a pretty easily manageable way. But that's going to be future videos, so keep an eye out for that one. In the meantime, if you like the video, please consider giving it a like and subbing if you are a fan of my content. The next game in question is Sonic Triple Trouble. Playing as Sonic or playing as Tails does not really change anything since Tails did not have his flight ability yet. For the act though, however, we go ahead and we collect this power up which allows us to breeze through a majority of the act. Doing so allows us to complete the act and move on to Act 2. Act 2 is a little bit more involved however, since we need to make sure we get the speed shoes in order to jump over the rings at the start, taking the bottom path for once. But with trial and error, we make it through the act with little to no issues. Moving on to Act 3. Moving on to Zone 2 though, however, we have a lot of what makes this challenge impossible. We have single or double paths that force you to collect rings, such as loop-de-loops, or closed tunnels that have rings directly in the middle. Unfortunate for this challenge, because I was also pretty hopeful about this game too. Moving on to our next game, we have Sonic Advance 1. The only thing that I'm not a huge fan of when it comes to playing Sonic Advance is the screen crunch. As you can see, the characters on screen are a lot bigger than they normally would on a normal television screen. Not only that, it's also harder to discern where rings are. A lot of what this challenge is going to be for the Sonic Advance titles is essentially flying over everything and occasionally landing when you need to refill. Doing so, it makes for a little bit of a boring experience. Sonic Advance acts do take a little bit longer than most other games. That's also a problem that gets worse when we move on to Sonic Advance 2, but that's not here, that's later. Keeping it moving through the act, we do manage to take the top path and, even funnily enough, make it to the special stage. Unfortunately, because of this challenge, since the special stages usually require us to get rings, that's not going to happen. Our boss is very easy. We need to take this very slow. Doing so allows us to move on to the second zone of the game, and that's where the run ends. That's another game off the list. Moving on to Sonic Advance 2. Hopefully this game will allow us to complete this challenge. Also, a quick side note about Sonic Advance 2. When you start Sonic Advance 2 up for the first time, you are forced to use Sonic. So, for this challenge, I am going to be using Tails, but if you were to use only Sonic, this challenge would for sure not be able to be completed. Technically, I could have used Cream for this challenge, but I preferred using Tails just because it's a personal preference. Now, if you wanted to be optimal, you would use Cream though. You've been seeing the footage on screen now of the actual levels, but it's really unfortunate that Sonic Advance 2 suffers a lot of the same that Sonic Advance 1 does. Going into the second act, it's more the same as Act 1, where you just, once again, dodge the rings, fly to the right path, go through the right path, avoid enemies, and get to the boss. Doing so, you get to the boss stage, and our biggest enemy is not the boss itself, but the fact that the game spawns infinite amount of rings. The rings come in a pattern where they go top, bottom, top, bottom. This boss fight is more so a dodge the rings than it is actually dodge the boss. Moving on to our next zone, it's a little bit more closed, but once again you go through the same routine. Choose the right path, go up here, go down there, avoid the enemy here, get shield here, get speed shoes if you can. Now there is this one spot in particular here where we do have to take the spring. Thankfully there's no rings above it, and it allows us to make our way to the higher path. A lot of loop-de-loops also impede our path, so we need to make sure that we go ahead and fly on top of those. dodging them entirely. We also need to make sure that we don't hit any jump panels because, once again, if we do, there may be some nasty rings in our path. It also looks like our problem for the Sonic Advance 2 acts is going to keep on increasing. As you can see, the acts are starting to take a little bit longer just because of the fact of having to take certain paths, and the levels are just as long as they always were. Now, this is where it gets interesting. This is the farthest that we've been in a challenge so far, so we move on to Act 2 of our second zone. Doing so, it's a lot of the same. Here, we are forced to go through this loop-de-loop. If we do, we end up collecting rings. Which brings our Sonic Advance 2 run also to an end. Moving on though, hopefully Sonic Mania will be able to treat us better. After having some intense deja vu here, we move on to Green Hill Act 1. But with the ability to play as Tails this time, it's a little bit easier for us to make it through this act. Because the level layout is so similar to the original Sonic 1's, we take much of the same path, we make it to the mini-boss, and the mini-boss is dealt with no problem. Moving on from that, we go ahead, we take the top path, we get the speed shoes, and using Tails' ability to fly, we move on to a later portion of the level. Stopping right here allows us to get the invincibility monitor, and after that allows us to take a middle route without having to worry about getting hit by either spikes or enemies. Grabbing the bubble shield allows us an extra buffer against the boss. As you can see, I had a little bit of a skill issue hitting the boss, but after our initial mess up, we take the boss out with some relative ease. After completing Act 2, we move on to Chemical Plant Zone. Chemical Plant is very tough, since we need to take a specific path here. Doing so will allow us to navigate through the chemical plant with relative ease. Also, I'm not too sure if it's the same for this title as it is with the original Sonic 2, but taking these pipes at a specific second gives us different paths associated with it. Backtracking a little bit allows us to reach the area that we need to in order to take our correct path. We need to go through the semi-solid wall and reach the path up above. Doing so allows us to go through a pipe, and as soon as we exit the pipe, we need to immediately jump. Moving through the act, we move with some relative caution, and we get to the checkpoint before the boss. Moving on to Act 2 of Chemical Plant, we make it through a small portion, and then we are faced with an unfortunate circumstance. We are forced to collect rings. Now we can skip this boost panel, but that boost panel leads into a forced loop-de-loop. We have one last game, that being Sonic Superstars. We once again go ahead and follow our main ways to play the game. Going through Act 1 is pretty simple work. Once again, we just make sure not to collect the rings, don't hit the enemies, don't get hit by the enemies, and we make it out pretty easily. Going on to Act 2 of Bridge Zone, it's a lot of the same beats as Act 1. And I also do want to just take a quick moment to note that in this game alone, Tails does have an interesting ability added to his flight. Something that Tails can do is when he's flying, if you hold down, he will start to move down at a quicker rate than he normally would, which is very nice for challenges like this, especially if we need to get over obstacles or we need to start seeing below us. Moving on to Speed Jungle Act 1, it is once again a lot of the similar beats that we have to the rest of the challenge. Using Tails' flight is very helpful here, that way we don't have to rush into anything or accidentally collect rings like those previously seen. Once we defeat the boss, we complete Act 1, choosing to not go for Act Sonic. Act Sonic doesn't really contribute anything in this challenge just because of the fact of, well, first of all, you are forced to play as Sonic, and on top of that, you still have to play Act 2. So, you don't progress unless you beat Act 2. Moving on, we do have the tunnel as previously shown, which if you wait too long, you are forced to collect rings in. Yes, you did see that right. I did pause buffer to ensure that I did not collect any rings. Moving on, we do continue into the tunnel. But as you can see, no matter what we do, we are forced to collect rings. That unfortunately ends our challenge, and gives me the verdict of this challenge. Can you complete a 2D Sonic game without collecting a single ring? The short answer, no. As you have seen in the footage, unfortunately all of our efforts to not collect the ring has been futile. I do believe that if we played certain games and allowed glitches, we would be able to complete them without collecting rings, but that would also be unlike the spirit of the challenge, just because of the fact that I wanted to try and do this without glitches, without debug mode, and by using the original characters. With that being said, however, I would like to thank you for watching the video, and to keep your eyes out because I do have some more content coming in the future. With that being said, once again, thank you for watching, and I am out.